The shadows of storm and night. The mysteries of life and light. From unearthly peculiarities, celestial and divine, to apparitions and transcendental signs. You're listening to the Spirit Podcast.
Hi, friends, and welcome to The Spirit. I'm your host, Beck. My guest today has been in education for 2 decades, teaching in trauma, anxiety, PTSD, as well as in skill development and employment and skill building. She has worked with children, youth, and adults with developmental disabilities, behavioral consulting, and incorporating creativity with all genres. In her early adult years, she began having visions, which opened her up to the mystical world beyond. Intuition now guides her in her daily life. As the author of Sight Beyond Sight, she shares her encounters and experiences to empower others to expand in the gift of consciousness. She's also the founder and CEO of Sight Beyond Sight. As an empowerment coach, her passion is supporting through whole change and solution-based advocacy. Transformation through personal development. Please welcome Raine Dalrymple. Hi, Raine. Thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having me, Becky. I'm so glad to be here, and good afternoon, everyone.
I'd love to dig into your history and just give a little background. And if you could just tell us how you got to where you are or how you came into your abilities.
Okay, well, pretty simple childhood, carefree and innocent. I did have some abuse encounters as a child and blocked them out, of course, until I was in my adult years. So then fast forwarding into my 20s, I, was raising my family and I started having visions, which I didn't really know what was going on. I didn't know, I didn't really have anyone in my life that could explain to me what was going on. And I think, of course, now we're so much more privy to spiritual information, but in those days, not so much. I was fortunate to have a grandmother who was psychic, and she tended to have a lot of psychic revelations in her dream state, at night in her sleep. So it was good that I at least had a little bit of support there with her, kind of guiding me and helping me to understand a little bit of what was going on. So, like I said, in my 20s, I started having visions, and quite a number of those visions are in the book, the experiences I've had. And then, of course, I went into the secular world and attended university, and I've got probably some 30 or 40 workshops under my belt at this point, and worked with, you mentioned all of the genres that I worked with, in the last 2 decades. But I was always infatuated with spirituality. And now I'm not talking about religion, of course, but the spiritual and the psychic world. And I was just always thrilled by it and in wonder about it. And then I would say, about midway on that journey, I began having intuitive information come to me. So it was almost like I was progressing and I was developing, but I was also being given this as a gift. So that took years to develop and to understand.
Now, when you say you had visions, what kind of vision? Visions of the future?
Oh, there were all kinds of visions. So some were in a meditative state, whereby, I was just, sitting or laying in a comfortable position, and I would have visions come to me. So when I say a vision, they tend to come in a picture form or a movie form, but then also with the feelings associated with them. It's a visual experience. And I've had since then, of course, in developing my skills in the paranormal and the psychic world, I have visions of people. I see people, as a medium sees people. So I see spirits that have passed on. So a lot of times my clients will come to me and they want to know, someone has passed on in their life and they would just like to know if I have any messages for them, those sorts of things.
I know you had worked with special needs children and adults. And did you notice if they had heightened intuitive psychic abilities?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. One of the gals I worked with was deaf, partially deaf, and bipolar. She had a few things happening. And the staff really had a difficult time keeping her, managed, because she was just sort of all over the place with behavior. And it was really odd because she just took to me right from the beginning, and we really just had a good relationship. And then I remember one day we were just sitting and looking through magazines. I was keeping her occupied, and she just turned to me and she said, you're going to get married. Just like that. Well, about 6 months later, guess what happened? They have this unique connection with the
They're
other
such
side.
pure souls.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that thing where they say children just know, children
Yes.
and animals, same thing. They're so connected.
Can you tell us a little bit about your book, Sight Beyond Sight?
Well, it's really quite interesting the way that it came out. I had, when we first begin writing a book, we have sort of an idea of what we want to say, or we have an outline. Really, the main focus was that I wanted to help people to become aware of consciousness, that any of us can develop these gifts and we can progress in the gift of becoming conscious. This book really brings together not just that metaphysical piece, but also the practical side of life. So, I talk a lot about, practical things. Like I'll talk about trauma and how it affects us and has affected us. I share experiences and stories. I talk about PTSD, just very ever so briefly, just things like that we experience in everyday life, because we are living the human experience. So we're not immune to things happening in our lives. But also it's about bringing that intuitive consciousness in. And how can we empower ourselves to grow in our own personal development and build our character, create solutions in our lives? And if anyone has had traumatic experiences in their lives, how can we become resilient out of it? Right? So there's a lot of stories in there that are very reflective. They've been my own experiences. They've been some experiences that others have shared with me. And I just really bring those together to show us that we really need the two. We really need the two to have that balance in life.
We do. Can you explain a bit about the 8 keys?
Well, some of your readers will be familiar with, because, people write books all the time, and, the psychology fields and the paranormal fields and things like resilience. We know about resilience. So that's the first key. And we're talking about bouncing back from difficulties or trauma or anything like that, rejuvenating our lives, building into change. How can we benefit from perhaps losing a partner in our lives, or a child? Or how can we, loss is a big thing in life, right? I also talk about imprinting in my second chapter, which is really quite fascinating. And I'm sure some of your readers have heard about cell memory and how it affects us, and how it actually is responsible in helping us make decisions in our lives. So how, when we have an experience, that experience is not only something that we experience physically, we experience that mentally and emotionally as well. And that experience, the effects from that experience are stored in our cells, which are within our entire being. So within our cell memory. And how can we, if we've had an experience that is unfavorable, how can we change that? How can we redesign our life to go in a direction that's positive? I talk about releasing after that, reflection. Reflection is really important, because in a progressive world, we're all about goal planning and achieving. There also needs to be that time for reflection, that time to sit in stillness. Eckhart Tolle talks about being in the moment, of presence. And then I talk about core. So the core self, that's very reflective of emotional regulation and centeredness, organization in our lives, fitness, healthy habits, those sorts of things. And then quantum energy is another fascinating chapter where I really get into consciousness. And, first we have awareness, right? So we need to become aware of the fact that there is possibly a bigger world out there, whatever our belief systems are, God and the angels, and there's people that go even, deeper than that, the underworld and all those sorts of things. But it's really just about, okay, once we recognize that there is a possibility of more than just this tangible physical world that we live in, which is essentially, as you know, the 3D, right? It's the
Correct.
3D world that we're in. And what's interesting about the timing of this book, because I started this book like a long time ago, what was really interesting about picking it up a year ago and finishing it was how the timing of this, with everything that's happening in our world globally right now, and how we're journeying through that 4D consciousness now. We're leaving the tangible 3D materialism world, moving through that portal, so to speak, the tunnel of 4D consciousness, and raising our awareness and coming into the awakening of the 5D world and the fifth dimension. So it's just fascinating how we can apply, then I go on and I talk in the next chapter about flow and vibration and how we can do that, how we can begin to do that.
I think there's a lot of confusion with the dimensions because we think we're in the 3D world and everyone speaks about we're moving into 5D. And I always had this thought that spirit resided on 4D. So I'm just confused as to, and I'm sure many people are, like, what is your thoughts on what 5D is?
Well, it's interesting because I too, had a certain perspective on what that meant. But then, as you dig more into this and as you're going through your own personal transformation and growth, you really start to realize that energy is energy. It's alive. It is abundant. It's all around us. So energy is alive no matter what dimension you're functioning in. So even in the 3D world, we're still in contact and communication with energy. We're made up of energy. So let's say an easy way to maybe explain it is you're thinking about someone that you haven't seen in a long time, and you have a dream maybe about them the night before, or all of a sudden you find yourself thinking about them throughout the day over coffee. All of a sudden the phone rings, and guess who it is? It's that
Right.
person. So that's a simple example of how energy is functioning across the 3D world, because energy, that type of an experience, is a subconscious experience. So subconscious minds connect with subconscious minds. So then we go into our 4D experience. And I think this is probably, like you're right, Beck, like this is where people kind of have some confusion. When we are in the 3D world and we start to become aware that there's more than just the physical plane, and we start to recognize that there's more to life than this earth, that there's a spiritual content of some kind, either in the greater out there or within us, depending on our belief systems, we start to have experiences that, let's say, for example, you're walking along the sidewalk and your grandmother who passed away, in fact, I have a story in there that I share that my daughter had about feathers, but you're walking along and all of a sudden a gust of feathers just like in the wind floats towards you. And right in that moment, you were thinking of that person. That is an experience in consciousness, in spirit. But when we are starting to venture into 4D, it's like when you've got two extremes, black and white. There's all the gray in between. So you could kind of visually look at it like that, whereby we may all be in this 4D experience, but all of our personal revelations and all of our personal experiences are so vast and so different. But yet we can understand and we can connect with what that other person is experiencing if we've had some kind of a similar experience as they have. And then I don't think any of us fully know, unless maybe you can share with me if you're versed on it. But I think we're all really kind of just sort of trying to figure out exactly what that 5D consciousness is going to look like and understand it. But all that we know is that that's where we're heading. That's our destination. And some that are more progressed may already be entered into that gateway of the fifth dimension. But as an Earth, as a planetary Earth platform, we are all moving in that direction. So it's something that we're reaching for and we're moving towards. Does that make sense?
It does. You think with everything in flux and what seems to be a bit of chaos, things are chaotic right now.
Yes.
You wonder, will it take a divine intervention or maybe an earth change for us all to move within that 5D?
Well, and I think too that, you speak about the chaos, that is bang on. It's exactly what everyone is going through. So everyone is experiencing the shifting. We are all experiencing it at different levels and in different ways, daily, weekly, monthly. We're all wondering, we're all growing. We're all growing in this experience, no matter where we started from. Some people were awakened before this began. Some people have come into awakening, and some people are still sleeping right now. So we're all in this together in a sense, and we're all moving towards that goal of enlightenment and more of an awakening awareness.
Do you think there's a timeline?
Honestly, I can't really speak to that right now because there have been a lot of, of course, when something like this happens, everyone comes from every direction and from every different schooled train of thought and unschooled train of thought. So I don't really have a specific timeline on it. I know that I'm often given timelines in the day or, that might be for the next month, or perhaps if I'm doing an intuitive reading with someone, they'll ask me, where do you see me in 6 months? And I kind of get a handle on what is happening in the greater world through that reading because of the information that's given by my guides. So to say overall right now, though, what do I see? I mean, logically, we can look at the logical piece of it that likely things will lift in the spring for the summer because, logically, the flu and colds recede at those times. And right. So, we can determine that we'll get back to living life a little bit more normally, as normally as we possibly can. But to say what will happen beyond that at this time, I haven't been given that.
That was going to lead into my next question, what you saw coming.
Oh, well, honestly, I do try to be careful here, just simply because there is a level of fear that is being dictated to us in a tyrannical fashion across the world right now, with our leaders and those that have a different agenda for the people of the world, a not very benevolent agenda. So I just kind of feel like my take on it, even looking back in the last year, is that anything could happen because you've got energies of all kinds coming in and contributing their agendas. So I think, if anything, what I could say is that as we are becoming more and more awakened, that we contribute in a positive way towards that benevolent energy and putting that positive energy out there to help raise the level of awareness and awakening and just of vibrancy across the whole earth. So that's relevant in our own personal lives every day. So when we're having challenges with what's going on, if we're having fear or depression or anxiety or anything like that, we want to bring in tools that can help us to raise that consciousness to a higher vibratory level. Esther Hicks talks about that. I'm sure you're familiar with her, and a lot of other schools of thought. And then, also reach out to programs such as yourselves, to educate ourselves, and then work with people that work in the field of vibration and energy. Up and coming, I'm just working on getting my programs out there where people can come in and join in on a Zoom type experience and learn and grow personally and individually, but then also share in an interactive format to help us grow.
Let's talk about what you do and what you offer and where you can be found.
So as I said, right now, my biggest passion would be to get this book out, because the book is so filled with stories, of angelic visits I've had, and even some dark energy experiences I've had, and just how to bring a solution in to those problems when they arise. And just by reading the book, you get a better sense. It's almost like I don't want to say a beginner's guide, but in a sense it is, because it's just got a lot of little bits of everything in there and information to understand how everything interconnects in a grid pattern, so to speak, and how we can create a better life for ourselves consciously. So I offer, of course, the book. And then again, all they need to do right now is go to my website, which is sightbeyondsight.org. And I have on there individualized, if people want to just reach out to me and have, a one-off intuitive reading. Some people hire me for business or personal consulting, whereby, we tie in the practical with the intuitive. And again, you can look for me soon on all platforms. I just signed up for TikTok the other day. So, I'll be on Zoom and TikTok. A little behind with that one. And just, I'm going to be posting this on my website, so there'll be a way to just log on there and go to whichever platform is comfortable for them.
His senses and time perception are distorted. He becomes confused, and he displays irresponsibility and perceiving things that don't exist in objective reality.
Nice. You're coming into the times. I don't even have a TikTok yet.
Yeah, I was kind of hesitant with that one, but it's just doing so well. And Facebook seems to be, it's still there, but it's functioning at a different level, I guess. TikTok seems to be a little more upbeat and quicker.
Definitely. It's kind of like a dying platform in a way. I think a lot of people are moving over to different platforms to find their information in a different way.
Yes.
I notice a lot of healers and mediums and psychics and spirituals, it seems to be an uptick in them stepping forward now. Like there is a grand thing happening. I think people, your average Joe is experiencing more spiritual encounters. They're seeing this happening daily and they're questioning it. So I'm so glad I get to speak to people that can help guide or help give information to help them through these transitions.
Absolutely. What's happening, and it's been happening for quite some time now. I mean, I can't really put a definitive figure on it, but, let's just throw, 10 years out there, for example. We've seen the progression of psychic mediums coming forward. We've seen new platforms open and that sort of thing. But what's happening essentially began happening long before this last year, and that is the veil is thinning between Earth and the cosmos. So you're definitely seeing more people having visions, having experiences that they can't understand, that they don't know what's going on. This is why, shows such as yours are key, because it helps people to become aware that that it's okay. You know, you don't have schizophrenia. It's almost like it's becoming the norm in a sense, especially with the numbers of people awakening. And I feel that that for sure is just going to continue. And I'm getting right now, between now and the next 3 years, you're going to see a massive, massive flood of people awakening to the point where they will have revelations, they will have their own psychic intuitions. It may just be, you know, in their own personal lives, but this is what we want. We want people to have those experiences to help guide themselves and to progress their lives in a positive way, so that now we're all contributing to raising the vibratory levels of the earth and towards the good and the benevolence that can happen between people and between groups. And, you know, no more Black Lives Matter stuff. I mean, God, that shouldn't have even happened in this last year. I mean, that's something that was
I
through
agree.
love and through kindness and just equality for decades now. So this is what, you know, education can do when we help each other. We're helping to raise that vibration.
I completely agree with that. I like your approach through the work you're putting out as far as needing to kind of heal ourselves and just put ourselves together for what's coming, for the change
Mhm.
that is
Yeah.
coming into everybody's life.
And it's
How
ongoing, you know, as we know, it's ongoing. I mean, we're being called to break barriers and overcome limitations, you know, that programming. And I talk about that in the book, programming that is from our childhoods and people that model in our lives and that sort of thing. So coming into awareness is the first step. And then coming into that awakening will help us to create a life of mastery for ourselves. And we know when we're happier, everybody's going to be happier, because we'll feel better about ourselves. So then we're more open to share and connect with others.
definitely helping others. How do we be open to the possibility of things that are coming in from the other side, the other dimensions, spirits and guides?
Well, you know, one thing people can do when they do start to have these experiences, that can include also dreams, because a lot of times messages will come to us through our dreams. So, you know, just get a journal, sit down and log your experiences. You can have separate journals for dreams and separate journals for life experiences, but you can feel free to put it all in one book. And you'll see as you write it out, it's just another amplification that helps you to realize, wow, this really happened to me. This is like an actual true experience that I'm going through. And you start to come into that acceptance of another worldliness, like a cosmic force that is greater than ourselves, that is out there and is helping us. And I'm sure, you know, many of your readers have probably had experiences where maybe they got into an accident and it was a miracle they survived. Or I talk about one experience in my book where my girlfriend and I were just sitting one day having tea, and all of a sudden the plant in my room just started swaying and moving. It was just phenomenal, because I mean, the heat wasn't on, the air conditioning wasn't on, there weren't doors being shut. It was just like we looked at each other like, whoa, what is happening? So it's those moments that we can capture and we can write them down, and that helps us to move through that process. And then the second thing we can do is sit in stillness, draw a bubble bath, put on some soft music, and just sit in stillness and just reflect in your mind and in your spirit and with your emotions. Reflect on life or things that have happened to you or things that you're wondering. Those are ways that we can open the doorway to the other side. Because I think, too, you know, as you can see, I'm so passionate about this, I could go on and on. The other piece of it is that what happens is in our structural world and in our educated world, you know, they say children from about 5 on start to forget, because up until that point, they actually have spiritual experiences. And there's been all kinds of accounts of children that have had reports of seeing a grandfather that has passed away, or things like that. But unfortunately, what happens is we feel like there's a wall there. There's a wall between this world and the God world. And what we come to find as we move through these experiences and we open ourselves up to these experiences and we have them, what we realize is that there are no walls. There's just no walls. There's no barrier. The sky is the limit. Anything is possible. And so that's when we start to really grasp that and move into it, into the experience, and realize that we can be, do, or have anything. It's there for us. We just have to move into it.
Yeah, I think a lot of that with children comes in through programming, through people stopping that connection at a young age, or
Yes.
you know, and
Yeah.
and also genetic programming, things that are coming through your DNA.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Some people will have spontaneous experiences. So when I was a child, I was about 5. I went out of my body for about, well, it seemed like it was about maybe 10, 15 seconds, but it was probably more like, 2 or 3 minutes. And so, I always felt like from that point on that there was something different about my life at that point, like moving forward. But I didn't really have any experiences growing up in my teenage years or anything like that I could really pinpoint and say, bring it back to that moment. It wasn't until my 20s that I started having revelationary experiences. So not everyone will have spontaneous experiences like that. Sometimes they have to invoke them through energy work, so that could include tapping or meditation or visualization and, just being in the moment of mindfulness. We have to sometimes prime those techniques in order to open that doorway for ourselves.
Have you had an OBE or out of body experience since you were a child?
Yeah, I did when I was in my 20s. Scared the heck out of me because I was just sitting in the living room watching a movie. I had just put the kids to bed, and all of a sudden my soul just started to lift off my body and up, like move up to lift up out of my head. And, I hadn't really gotten into energy work of any kind or, any understanding of it at that point. So I just called on my Lord and he just, as soon as I did that, my soul just shot right back into my body.
Seems to be frightening for many people when that experience happens.
I think so, because it really threw me off for a bit. I wasn't sure what to think of it. I didn't know who to talk to about it. And so, if any of your readers are having experiences like that or have had experiences of that, this is why it's really good to reach out to someone you can trust and someone that has some understanding of what's going on or what transpired, so that they can be at peace with it. They may never ever have another experience like that again, but it also may open them up to having different experiences. So it just depends on where, I've heard of people being given the gift of sight and just having had so many experiences that they just flat out said, I don't want this anymore, and just turned and walked away from it because it was just too overwhelming for them.
Yeah, I think fear plays into that.
Yeah.
We leave our bodies every night. I mean, when we dream. And
yeah, absolutely, yeah. Yeah.
And I know that there's times where you kind of crash right back in. And
yeah, they always say if you, sometimes you wake up and you feel like you were falling out of the bed. You wake up and you feel like, oh, I almost fell out of bed. That's the moment, right? When you were out of your body, and then all of a sudden, like you say, you just, boom, you crash right in.
I've had that several times.
Oh, gee. And it's not a very good feeling, is it?
It's not.
If I could say anything, it would be just to encourage people to not be afraid. There's a lot of fear, as we've both touched on briefly across the earth right now. There's a lot of chaos. People have lost their jobs. We're all trying to figure out what to do about that. There's more fear mongering that's happening, that, there's going to be more viruses coming and a new world order and that sort of thing. And I think while it is intimidating, we need to really come into that awakening of consciousness in order to basically to save ourselves. Because if we're walking around in fear, we're putting out that energy into the world. And so by coming to know infinite intelligence, which is God, which is divine source, which are all of the angels that support us and help us. And those are angels, archangels, but they're also, people in our lives like grandma or grandpa that have passed away that are with us, or an old friend. I mean, we have like the resources of all of that support. And if we can just bring ourselves to grasp that, that is going to help us to have a more calm approach to, okay, yeah, there's a lot of things going on right now, but let me just take a moment and do some deep breathing. And that's another technique I talk about in there. Do some deep breathing and just get centered. Because guess what? We're going to be okay. No matter what, we're going to be okay. We're going to get through this. And there's of course, some routine and ritual, simple techniques that we can do. Hydrate, nourish, stay in movement, these sorts of things. And I've done some videos on that in the last month. But we also need to nourish that spirit, that spirit life, the spiritual consciousness that is within us. It is within us. It's outside of us. It's in the greater cosmos, but it's inside of us. And it's by bringing those two together and connecting, we can now map our lives. We can now create that mastery in our lives. And it's crazy. It's like when we do that, we bring all of those right people towards us energetically, and we connect with all of those right people. And then now we all are vibrating in that vibration together, and we're creating a new world. And that could be very simply what it is. We are now actually in the midst of creating the new earth, because we're actually living it, and we're actually conscious of it, and conscious in moving forward in our own intuitive consciousness empowerment. I just love it.
I do too. In the highest of good. And it's this balance. It's this balance of keeping one foot kind of aware as to what's happening, but without going into it so deep that, like you said, you're putting out that negative energy, because you're absorbing it and just pushing it out. And that other side of really staying grounded and having that spiritual connection, that thing within you, like you spoke about.
Yeah, because, like in all truth, we can just go and hide our head in the sands, like the ostrich does. But we do have to be educated to a degree. We have to be educated in what's going on globally, so that we are aware of some of the pitfalls that are happening politically and economically. But we don't want to be too top heavy in that realm, because that's going to bring us down. It's as you said, we want to then, we want to be aware of the practical, but then we also want to bring in that consciousness. We want to walk in life consciously and bring in all of those gifts that come from spirit and incorporate the two together so that they merge, and we are now creating a positive path.
And we're very lucky to have people like yourself that are light workers, or, almost living guides that can help people through these transitions. And I'm so happy that I get to talk to people like you, because I know that a lot of people, there's a lot of famous people, and they're always the ones in the spotlight. And we look at the world and we say, there's so many bad people out there. Where are all the good people? And the good people are there. They're just not getting directed to in the right way. Right. And so I love that my program can bring people like yourself out for others to reach out to book a consultation, a reading, to pick up your book and read through it and do some self-work.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So,
And, I've had mentors that have gotten me to here, right? So I'm grateful for those people that it may have been one little thing that they showed me or taught me. It may have been an essence, lots of teachings. They've gotten me to this point. And so that's how it's important for us to share what we've learned with others. Because in that feeling, it's almost like it's an emotional feeling of buoyancy. Then we can come into alignment with who we truly were divinely created and brought to this earth to be. And we all deserve that. We all deserve to be that person. We all deserve to walk in alignment and to fulfill our passions. All of our passions are different and different at different times in our lives. There's a time in our life when we, are in the childbearing years, we want to raise a family. And then there's a time to put our energy into our career. We have different hats that we wear, right? And it's really important that we, as you say, we share with one another and we grow together, because that's really what the divine wants of us to do, is to be the best people that we can be.
For sure. And to be a warrior, you have to go through your trials and tribulations. You have to go through some of the greatest heartbreaks and traumas in order to heal, to become this strong person.
As you can see, I'm passionate about people coming into awakening, and I just can't wait to talk to some of your listeners. My phone number's on there. They can text me, they can call me, they can find me on Facebook. They can send me a messenger message. I mean, the beauty of social media is and social connections is vast, so they can feel free to reach out to me and we can have a chat. They'll find that I'm not this super expensive person, because my heart is in helping people. So I like it to be able to be affordable for everyone.
Yes.
So that they can grow with that instead of, having to refuse help or support because it's just thousands of dollars out of their reach.
It's so true. It's so true. There's so many out there that you turn to and you say, I would really like to sit down with that person, but it's either my mortgage payment or,
right.
And it's, to me, a true healer or somebody that is serving or of service does that reasonably. They don't make it difficult for the person. So,
because the beauty in all of that is that when we help each other, that person, when you're helping someone else or someone's helping you, you're expanding, you're growing in not only your personal life, but in your goals and your dreams. So there are a lot of leaders globally that have been sleeping on their sister's couch, and then through masters helping them, they're now wealthy and they're doing well in their lives. And so that's what it's all about. It's about helping one another and growing together.
And growing spiritually by doing so.
Exactly.
Raine, you've been great to speak with, and I want to let my listeners know that I'm going to link up her website and her contact information in the description of the episode. So if you'd like to reach out and contact her, if you'd like to go over and buy her book, it'll be easy for you to do so.
Thanks for having me, Becky. It was a pleasure sharing with you, and I just really enjoyed sharing all of the information and possibility. Possibility is there for all of us.
To the spirit
podcast.
Supernatural science.
Aliens. I'm ghost.
Psychic. Mystic.
Spirit.
Divine source.
Heaven. The dead. Magic.